We're going to get to hear from Rich Wonderell in just a minute, but I just want to be sure everybody's settled and ready to go.
Oh.
Just 1, 2.
I think it came off your collar.
It's because it was hanging down by my leg. We got an aborted start. We got a restart. Test 1, 2? Yes. Pretty good, okay, thanks. That's great. Thanks for the thumbs up. Thanks, everybody. And thanks to Light and Richard, especially Mariah. It was a big help to me in putting this together. Thanks to Glenn for launching this series. I see somebody point to their ears. Louder? Can you hear louder? Thank you. Okay, here we go. Thank you all for coming. As I was putting this together, I was reminded of a TV series, This Is Your Life, with Ralph Edwards. Remember that? So why do I still have this uniform? You know, that's a good question. I mean, because I don't wear it anymore. Speaking of uniforms, do you see pilots wearing hats at the airport anymore? Maybe overseas foreign flag carrier, they still have traditional standards. They hardly even wear jackets anymore. I see those Southwest pilots wearing leather jackets. I get a little bit jealous, you know, like they're wearing a leather jacket. I'm not accustomed to speaking to an audience. Because in my line of work, I had a captive audience. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard, Grandview Terrace. Flight to nowhere. Please sit back and know that we will do everything we can up front here to give you a safe, fast, and smooth flight. Thank you. So let's start at the beginning. From age 16 to 84, I flew. I sold my last airplane in March of 2024. 68 years. What a ride. My life in aviation began as a teenager. I was very lucky to have a father who loved aviation, and he loved me. He owned an airplane at San Carlos Airport, just 20 miles south of San Francisco. He's one of those guys that would drive out to SFO and park at the end of the runway just to watch the airplanes take off. He encouraged me to fly, and fly I did, even though there were cars and girls to compete with. Start the projection, please. Roll them. It's not going yet. There it is. That's what I learned to fly in, a Cessna 120, 1947. 1947. I continued flying during my college years, achieving private pilot's license, commercial instrument, and instructor ratings. I graduated from San Jose State in 1963 with a degree in aeronautics. I built most of my flying hours flight instructing. There's me in my earlier days. This is a 1947 Taylorcraft BC-12. It was one of my students' airplanes. Well, school days are over, and I needed to get a job. I was in the process of joining the Navy when a friend of mine said he saw a a classified ad in the San Francisco Chronicle. Quote, TWA hiring flight deck crew members. And he was bragging that he had sent in his application. Well, I got a little bit jealous, so I thought maybe I'd be an airline pilot instead of a Navy pilot. Now, what did I know? I'm 23, been in school my whole life. I didn't ask anybody for advice. I applied to TWA, and voila, I was hired. I interviewed in Kansas City in October 1963 with 16 other applicants. The cutoff age was 32. I was the second youngest in class. Frank Albanese was the younger, but unfortunately, he was terminated for not successfully completing upgrade to captain. Yep, in those years, it was up or out. Now, I'm so naive, the morning of my first interview, I'm sitting at the breakfast counter in the restaurant, and there's a guy in a uniform. He had stripes on his sleeve. So feeling proud, I asked him, what airline do you fly for? He replied, I drive a Continental Trailways bus. Well, I feel just a little bit sheepish. I was naive. Okay, I'll divert here. This is, at 19 years old, I flew this airplane, the Cessna 172, to Anchorage, Alaska, with two high school buddies. Just on a little excursion and to go fishing. We landed at Cook Inlet at low tide. What they didn't tell me is you should take off and leave before the tide comes in. See, I got a little bit nervous. I built little dikes around the wheels because that's the water. It came all the way up to the wheels. 19. You can do anything at 19. I was in the third class, did I say that? I was in the third class hired. And another class started every 2 weeks. All training in 1963 was as Connie flight engineers. The day you got hired, you got a seniority number. Advancement in pilot positions is based on seniority. In 1964 and several years thereafter, a big hiring occurred as the airline industry was expanding. I became relatively senior quickly as the TWA seniority list tripled. This is the Lockheed Constellation, Queen of the Skies. Howard Hughes is responsible for this aircraft being built. I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about this later, but I'll just mention it right now. This is a restored Connie. It's sitting at JFK International Airport at the new TWA hotel. I'll talk about this a little later. This is the flight engineers panel. Pre-flight inspections were a big deal. We would place a ladder at the aft wing root, climb up onto the wing with a screwdriver in hand. The screwdriver was for two uses: to check fuel and oil caps, and to jab it into the wing in case you started to slide off the wing. The hole would be patched later with some 500-mile-an-hour tape. I don't know how many had to use that screwdriver for that purpose, but one flight engineer did suffer death sliding off the wing. I didn't have to use the procedure, but I can tell you this California boy froze during those Midwest winter. No talk about the beloved Connie is complete without a comment about Uncle Howard, as the old-time pilots referred to Mr. Hughes. Back in the day, Uncle Howard would call up his favorite flight engineer and tell him to prepare ship number so-and-so for one of his trips to nowhere with a bunch of his Hollywood friends. I checked out as co-pilot on the 707 in 1966. The Boeing 707 is a landmark aircraft in aviation history, often credited with ushering in the modern jet age with commercial travel. It first entered service in 1958 with Pan Am. Let me back up a little bit. In my early co-pilot years, I flew what is known as CRAF missions. CRAF, C-R-A-F, is an acronym for Civilian Reserve Air Fleet, started during the Berlin Airlift. We would fly from Travis Air Force Base, California, to Vietnam, with stops in Honolulu, Guam, and Okinawa. Crew change and airplane servicing at each stop. The flight from Okinawa to Vietnam was a turnaround back to Okinawa with no refueling, as we tankered sufficient fuel for the return trip. I can tell you the soldiers getting on the airplane for the return trip back to the U.S. were very happy. Those were very senior flights, so the flight attendants had some years on them. They pretty much mothered those guys. Kitagay also flew around the world then. I flew that out of San Francisco to Honolulu, Guam, Hong Kong, and Bangkok. My favorite layover city was Hong Kong. My least favorite was Bombay, now Mumbai. The Convair, oops, this is my certificate. When I upgraded to captain, I'm 28 years old. And those are the other fellows that upgraded at the same time. This was a career day at my daughter's school. And I'm holding up little hostess wings that the flight attendants would give to kids on board flights. What was funny about this is I was walking down the aisle of the school to go to the classroom, and I was approached by a little boy student, and he looked at me and he said, "Look, it's a Marine!" Nothing like a uniform. The Convair 880, fastest subsonic jet of its time. It was designed to outpace the competitors like the Boeing and Douglas DC-8. It proved to be fuel inefficient, and limited seating made it commercially unviable. Well, we're on a sequence here. Go ahead. The Boeing 767 is one of the most iconic jetliners of the 60s to the 80s. I flew this aircraft for a grand total of 27 hours. At the time, Kitagay was awaiting delivery for the 767, and rather than have me stay at home with pay, I was trained on the 727. Is it any wonder the airline went broke? But Kitagay was known as having one of the best training departments. Air Force One crews would receive recurrent training at TWA. Whoop. Sorry about that, folks. Told you I'm a neophyte. The Lockheed L-1011 TriStar was the first wide-body airliner certified for Category 3C auto land, meaning it could automatically land in zero visibility without human intervention. Its avionics and autopilot was exceptionally advanced for the 70s. Can you start that now? Thank you. Help from my trusty assistant here. There it is, the Granddaddy of them all, Boeing 747. Look at this landing. Oh, what a great job. Those whales just kissed the ground. Thank you. The easiest of all the airplanes I flew to land was a 747. And when you made a landing like that, which was most of the time, you would not know you're on the ground. You can see it just so smooth. At this time of my career, I am senior enough to hold 747 captain, based out of New York. Dreama also transferred to JFK. We did not want to commute from the West Coast to the East Coast, so we sold our condo in San Carlos, bought a motorhome. In the fall of 1987, we headed east. First stop, a month parked outside of San Antonio in a small town called Bandera. A sign outside of town said, "Cowboy capital of the world." They had a championship rodeo rider there. Now, each month, we would hop a flight to New York to fly our trips. The next two stops, we spent 2 months outside of Houston and commuted to New York. Now, have you ever come out of a store and you go into the parking lot and say, "Where did I park my car?" Well, there was this one time I came back from an international flight to Kennedy, and I had to jump a flight to go back to where we were parked for the month, and you know what? Where did we park the motorhome? What town should I go to?
It happened.
Spring, summer, and fall. We ended up, after Houston, we ended up in Louisiana for a month. And then we ended up in West Palm Beach, Florida, for the remainder of the winter. Springtime came, and we moved north. In between flights, we would play tourist and visit all the historic sites in the Northeast. Story time. Now, flights across the pond, we call the Atlantic the pond because it's smaller than the Pacific, left Kennedy, one of those East Coast airports. We also flew out of Boston, Washington, Dulles, and Philadelphia to Europe. When you arrived Europe early in the morning, it's a 24-hour layover. You get to the hotel just dead tired. You got to sleep twice because it's a 24-hour layover. And the next morning you get up and fly back to U.S. When Dreama and I would fly together, I would say, "Let's go for a walk." And she would say, "Easy for you to say. You sat across the Atlantic. I walked." She had a point there. Because back in those days, the cabin team worked hard. They were on their feet the entire flight. Now, being your typical married couple, a discussion occurred. I said, "Well, if you had comfortable shoes, instead of those pretty ones, go for a walk." Well, the marriage survived. She relented and got a pair of Rockports. They were ugly, but she did admit that they were more comfortable. This is a photo shoot. Dreama is doing advertising in a studio in Culver City. She would get flight pay, so she would volunteer to do these photo shoots. That's an advertisement that appeared in the Wall Street Journal. You know which one is Dreama? Huh?
Second from the top.
Second from the top. In 1987, well, for several years, when the Pope came to tour the United States, TWA was the airline. We equipped the 727, especially for the Pope, all first-class seating. There were 2 Lockheed 1011s that flew along. One was for the international press, one for the domestic press. We teased that Dreama was the token Baptist. Pope's trip is the Pope visited Monterey, California. The mayor was Clint Eastwood. He came to the airport to greet the crew. Well, they were all agog.
That's true. That's true.
This is a Nippon Airlines cargo airplane. In 1989, I was lucky enough to be among 40 flight crews contracted to NCA. A wonderful experience. We were treated with the utmost respect. They trained us all over again to their standards. Part of the training was on an island called Samojijima in the Okinawa southernmost region, where Japan Airlines and all Nippon Airways had training facilities. We stayed on the island flying every other day for 10 days. When I say flying, I mean the actual 747. Take it to altitude, steep turns, approaches to stalls, come down, do landings, engine outs. What's remarkable about this is that the US Airlines discontinued actual aircraft training in the mid-70s. There were more accidents on training flights than there were in scheduled passenger flights. You remember Nicole, Holly that used to work in Flight Richmond? She was on this same island teaching English, but not at the same time. This is my last flight with the Pont Cargo. They treated us so well. I didn't get any kind of a send-off like this from TWA. This was in December of 1995. I returned to TWA as a very senior captain and retired 3 months later at 55. I would return from flights and Dream would say, you either have to stop complaining or retire. So I hung up your wings, my wings. You see, what happened was I got spoiled flying freight. Freight doesn't complain. No regrets. What I miss are the people. So we bought a motorhome and hit the road. 3 winters in Mexico, trip to Alaska, a couple of trips to Canada, and we ended up in Happy Trails over here on Bell Road in '99, and bought a house in what's now called The Grand. So here's that Connie back at JFK. Fully restored, and to the right of where this says TWA, that's a hotel that was built. The original TWA terminal was designed by Errol Sarin, opened in 1962, and quickly became a mid-century modern icon with sweeping concrete wings and futuristic shell structures. TWA ceased operations in January 2001. They were purchased out of bankruptcy by American Airlines. At that point, the terminal closed. It sat unused for nearly 2 decades. Although the Port Authority invested roughly $20 million over years to stabilize the structure. A New York-based developer revitalized the dormant terminal as a hotel complex. He had previously worked for TWA briefly as a baggage handler. In 2014, he restored the terminal as is and connected it to JetBlue's Terminal 5 via its historic flight tubes and built 2 new hotel wings. The hotel opened on May 15, 2019. The restoration is considered a modern preservation triumph, turning a once doomed landmark into a functional centerpiece. A bit of a museum up there. Off to the left are flight attendant uniforms.
Oh,
They had the best food.
And we had a reunion at the hotel in 2019. Here's a short video to start my next segment of the presentation, my humanitarian flights. Start the video, please.
You.
A blind woman sees. A deaf child hears. A crippled boy runs. Miracles deep in the heart of Mexico. This is El Fuerte, a remote farming village in northwest Mexico. The church is the tallest and the oldest building in town. Every night, church bells signal the evening mass. Faith is strong and life is hard.
Here, only those who are working and paying into the state social security system have any health care. If you're poor and unemployed, you're simply out of luck. So for hundreds here, the only option is that first weekend of every month when the Americans come to town.
They come in private planes, doctors, nurses, translators, volunteers, with Liga International, the Flying Doctors of Mercy. On this weekend, a dozen planes make the trip from Southern California to remote airstrips. They will treat hundreds of patients in 3 small clinics before the weekend is over. It's just past sunrise Saturday morning. More than 300 people are in line waiting for the clinic in El Fuerte to open on this cold winter morning. Many have walked for miles. This little girl's eye was punctured by a dart 3 months ago. She hasn't been able to see out of that eye ever since. This boy is deaf. Many others are blind. They wait in line with blank stares and pray for a miracle. Orange County eye surgeon Art Geibel is about to make miracles happen. He and 2 other ophthalmologists will remove dense cataracts from those who are blind in both eyes. Witness a miracle, the miracle of sight. Yo estoy mirando, she says. I am seeing. Next door, audiologist Valerie Mendez is fitting children with hearing aids. The number of deaf children here is staggering.
Many of the kids, like this little guy, had ear infections when they were younger that were untreated, and because of that, they are now profoundly hard of hearing.
Valerie claps her hands. No reaction. Then the hearing aid is placed, and miracles happen.
¿Cuántos años tiene? 6. Bye-bye.
We leave El Fuerte to visit another clinic even more remote in the tiny village of San Blas. Here, the landing strip is made of dirt. In San Blas, the foot doctors are busy. Irvine podiatrist Victor Katya has operated on many crippled children here. On this day, a surprise visit from one of his former patients.
And he runs fast and he's not having any problem keeping up with his friends.
Martine is 8 years old. This is how he looked when he was barely 2, born with club feet. Dr. Katya performed surgery on both of Martin's feet 6 years ago. And here he is today, showing off for the doctor who made it all possible.
Just seeing these kids do well makes it all worthwhile.
Martine's mother calls it a miracle. But there's only so much these doctors can do. They can't heal this little girl's fatal skin disease, and they don't have the equipment to remove this girl's benign brain tumor. The faces of the children they can't help haunt the doctors on their way home. But it is the success stories that keep them coming back. Nurse Jackie Hansen began building the San Blas Clinic 18 years ago. She measures her success.
One life at a time.
Next month, they'll be back with another pocket full of miracles to give away, one life at a time.
That's Eric. Eric is right there. Eric, give him a wave, stand up. My good friend Eric is a one-time pilot with Liga, also did some scheduling, and was on a pilot safety committee. And that was his airplane when he flew in there. It was a little fast, speeded up. For 12 years, I had the privilege of flying with this organization. What began as a reason to fly became one of the most meaningful parts of my aviation life. Being able to support people who gave their time, skill, and money to help others is truly humbling. That's the Liga website. The guy in the Hollywood glasses is yours truly. Eric says I'm still the poster boy.
Our poster boy.
I bought this aircraft in 2008. It's a 1958 Beechcraft Bonanza. Photographs taken at Olympia, Washington. That's Mount Rainier in the background. So we take off out of Goodyear, go down to El Forte. Actually, we stopped first at Ciudad Obregon, where there is immigration and customs, 2 hours and 45-minute flight, and then 45 minutes over to El Forte. This is the runway at El Forte. It's paved. The Army is bivouacked there in that little white building to the right. There's a typical, we'd fly down once a month for a long weekend, either a Thursday or Friday departure and a Sunday return. This is San Carlos, or also known as Guaymas, Mexico, just flying by. This is a typical team that I would take down. He's an eye doctor, and his team from Davis, California. Their luggage. El Forte, we were met by the Army, go through our documents. Sometimes they would check our luggage again. And the little gal there in the white smock is Eric's lovely wife. She's a nurse. I'll talk about the airplane first. This is I downsized from the four-place airplane to this airplane. This is called a Vans aircraft. It's certified as an experimental because it's not factory built. You buy the kit and you assemble it. It's inspected by authorized inspectors at critical phases of its construction. I bought this aircraft from the builder who lost his medical license. The passenger is an emergency room doctor from Alberta, Canada. I know him from the church here. He's a snowbird. And yes. And this is our very own Mary Beth Lord. Mary Beth. There she is. You know her from church. She's a retired pediatric nurse. OB-GYN. Sorry. Yes. Credit where credit is due. So a funny story about Mary Beth. Met her one month in church, and the next month she was signed up for Liga. The morning of departure, she says, "Well, I'm afraid of flying." I said, "Oh." I said, "Well, I got these little pills, you know, they kind of settle you down a little bit if you want to take one." She says, "No, I'll see how it goes." Okay. Well, it's one of those typical beautiful Arizona mornings. We launched out of Deer Valley, went right over Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport at 4,000 feet. She's got her phone out, taking pictures. We get up to cruise altitude, and she says, "I like this." Had a great 3 days of work down in El Forte at the clinic. Got bloody in the OR. On the way back, we landed in Nogales to clear U.S. Customs. Prior to descent, we're making out our customs declaration. And I've got my sheet down here in my lap. I'm making it out. I see out of the corner of my eye, she's looking over at me. And she's looking at my form. And she looks at me again, and she said, "You're 80 years old?" Do you know this now? So we have another doctor here in our midst, Dr. Richard Erweiler. I think most of you know him. I also want to credit him for being one of those volunteers who did many trips to third world countries. He also, during his career, administered for 20 years the tribal communities in Arizona and New Mexico. And he noticed a lot of women were handicapped from automobile accidents. And they were not receiving adequate or proper rehabilitation. So with his own funding and for friends of his that he knew, he raised money and opened a nonprofit clinic in Denver to serve these people. Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate it. So there's a picture of the clinic in the morning, Friday morning or Saturday morning. This is my daughter, Sherry. They're assembling wheelchairs, pretty basic wheelchair, they're all donated. There's a Dreama, and that's the doctor's wife from Edmonton. They made a trip.
Dar, yeah.
That was his foot. I got a kick out of this road construction. Warning. The locals would serve lunch at the clinic. At the OR. One of the hotels we'd stay in. There's a cataract. I just like taking pictures of some of the locals. This was a typical street, walking to the clinic. But downtown, they would fix up these buildings with government money. The city of El Fuerte was established by the Spanish in 1500, gold mining and silver mining. And so it's classified as a magical city. And so the government comes in with money to fix up the buildings downtown. The inside may be gutted, but the outside will look like this. On the street downtown. On a Saturday night, everybody would get together and have gala dinner. Meals were wonderful, kind of expensive though, it would be like $15. These are water filter containers. This is a concrete container. The black off to the left is the form. They would pour concrete to make these containers. So that's what that's a $25 container. It's about the size of a garbage can, and you can see the water coming out. Now how this works, they put 2 granulations of gravel with sand on the top. You pour water in it, 30 days later you get clean water. It's a biological action. A good bacteria, a film starts on the top of the sand, and a good bacteria eats the bad bacteria, and you get water. Now is that a God thing or what? That's the lid for the container with instructions about how to care for it. You must keep it wet on the top so that the biological activity there continues. We hired a local school teacher there, Carlos. He's giving instructions to a local family there about how to care for the water filter. I took this picture of the little kid that's living there. He's got a Sony tape driver there hanging off him. We know it doesn't work, but. So this is the El Forte River. There is a bridge that goes across, but we hired this guy to take us to the other side. There's the bridge, a walking bridge. And there's a local Uber taxi. He's delivering mattresses across the river. And this is the leader in the water filter project. She's hailing the water taxi. We're visiting a site where we put a water filter in. The little gal to the left, that's the mother. Looks like all of what, 15 or 16. That's her latrine, her bathroom. It's her kitchen. One weekend a month, or season, we would fly on Sunday on departure. We'd go over to the Baja coast on the Pacific side. And you see that's a picture of a whale there. We're gonna go whale watching. Laguna San Ignacio. So they're out in the Ponga, up close and personal. Of course, you know, these whales come down from way up north and they spend the winter here. Up real close and personal. So that's the end of the Liga operation. This is another activity that I was privileged to do. I got a good excuse to fly my airplane. In Scottsdale, there's United Blood Services. And this box is full of platelets. Every day, one of these boxes goes to Yuma and to Flagstaff. And there's a cadre of about 150 pilots here in the area that deliver these boxes. And they come from the facility that delivered these little vans. This is at Goodyear Airport. So I took this picture. This is Ontario, California. I just like the contrast of my little airplane amongst the big island. And guess who the Sherpa is there with the luggage? Raymond. I'm busy planning.
Yeah, you're busy.
This is my daughter Sherry and her husband and her granddaughter, my granddaughter, 12 years old. I took all my kids for flights. I took all my other grandchildren for flights. Nobody ever asked. I just said, let's go flying. She sent me a letter. Grandpa, take me for an airplane ride. Well, are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. This is in Bremerton, Washington. I love taking people for flights. And this little guy's a happy camper. And then he sent me this letter. Cute, huh?
Very cute.
Oh, I didn't get to the last one. Well, that was the last one. I did have a cartoon there that Frank did for me, Frank Barr, but it didn't make it in. Oh, here it is. Thank you all for coming.
Mike, you have a question? Yes, shout it out. Oh, Dreamer, stand up. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rich. That was terrific. And thank Frank for helping you put it together.
Yeah, thanks,
and
Frank.
thank all of you for coming.